Hey, I'm Logan. I'm 31. I live in a quiet little town in North Carolina, and I guess you could say my life's been pretty simple. I work as an HVAC technician. I own a modest two-bedroom house, and I've always liked the sense of community in our neighborhood. People here wave when they pass by. They borrow sugar or tools from each other, and everyone knows everyone. It's the kind of place where you feel safe. I've always been the guy who helps carry groceries, fix a leaky faucet, or mow an elderly neighbor's lawn. Nothing flashy, nothing complicated, just real life. I've known my neighbors across the street, the Evans family, for years. Darren and Celeste Evans always seemed like the perfect couple, big house, manicured lawn, the whole picture. They weren't close friends of mine, but we always exchanged small talk and holiday greetings. That day started like any other. I got home around 5:30, went to grab my toolbox to fix a loose cabinet hinge in the kitchen, and realized I was missing a specific wrench. I could have waited until the weekend, but I hate leaving things half-finished. I figured I'd pop across the street and ask Darren. As I walked up the pathway to their front porch, I immediately noticed something felt off. The porch light was on, but the curtains were drawn tight. I rang the doorbell and waited. No answer. I was about to turn back when the door creaked open. It was Celeste. I froze. Her eyes were red and puffy, makeup streaked down her cheeks. Her long brown hair was messy, and she wore an oversized cardigan like she had just thrown it on. She looked utterly broken. "Celeste, are you okay?" I asked, taken completely off guard. She tried to straighten up and gave me a weak smile that barely lasted a second. "Logan, hey, I wasn't expecting anyone." I hesitated. My mind raced. Should I ask about the wrench? Of course not. That would have been ridiculous. "I'm sorry, I just needed to borrow a wrench, but it can wait. Are you all right?" Her eyes filled with fresh tears. "No, I'm really not." In that moment, I couldn't walk away. Something told me she needed someone, anyone, and I happened to be there. "Do you want to talk, or I can leave if you want privacy?" I offered, not sure what the right move was. She shook her head, wiped at her face, and stepped aside to let me in. "You can come in if you want to." I nodded softly and stepped into their usually pristine home that now felt heavy, like the air itself carried sadness. The living room lights were dim tissues scattered across the coffee table. A single wine glass sat half full next to an open bottle. Celeste motioned for me to sit, and I did, careful not to disturb the controlled chaos around me. She sat across from me, hands clasped tightly together. "I kicked Darren out," she said, suddenly breaking the silence. I didn't respond right away. My heart sank. I had never seen or heard anything that hinted at trouble between them. "I've known for years," she continued bitterly, "about the affairs, about the lies. I pretended I didn't. I thought I could fix it, but today I couldn't anymore." I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. "I'm so sorry, Celeste. I had no idea." She laughed bitterly, wiping another tear from her cheek. "No one did. I played my part, the perfect wife, the perfect house, the perfect marriage. But it was all fake. I just didn't want to be alone. I didn't want to fail." Her words hit hard. I didn't know what to say, but I also knew silence was sometimes the best comfort. "You're not failing," I finally whispered. "You stood up for yourself. That takes strength." She looked at me for a long moment as if trying to believe my words. "You're kind, Logan. I've been holding this in for so long, and now that it's out, I feel numb." I reached out instinctively and placed my hand gently over hers. "You don't have to go through this alone. I'm here." She gripped my hand tightly, the first genuine connection I'd seen from her since I stepped inside. We sat like that for what felt like hours, talking about life, about pain, about trust, and betrayal. She told me how Darren had been unfaithful almost from the start, how she had caught him twice but stayed because she thought he'd change. "I gave him everything," she whispered, "and he gave me nothing but lies." "You deserve better," I said firmly. "You deserve someone who treats you the way you should be treated." Her expression softened. "You really believe that?" "I do." The clock struck midnight. The wine bottle was nearly empty. I stood up slowly. "I should probably go. It's late." She stood too, walked me to the door, then hesitated. I watched her wrestle with something inside her. Finally, she looked me straight in the eyes and softly said, "You can stay if you want to." I was stunned. It wasn't suggestive. It wasn't romantic. It was desperate, human, vulnerable. She just didn't want to be alone that night. I nodded. I'll stay. She led me back to the couch. I sat beside her and she leaned against my shoulder. Minutes turned to hours and eventually her breathing softened as she drifted to sleep beside me. I stared at the darkened room, knowing this night had just changed everything. The sun filtered softly through the half-closed curtains. I blinked awake, realizing I hadn't moved from the couch. Celeste was still resting against my shoulder, her breathing steady and peaceful. I carefully shifted, not wanting to wake her, and just stared for a moment at the quiet house. The heaviness of the night before lingered in the air. After a while, Celeste stirred. Her eyes fluttered open and widened slightly as she realized where she was. "I'm sorry," she whispered, pulling back and brushing her hair behind her ear. "Don't be," I said gently. "You needed someone." She offered me a tired smile and stood. "I should make some coffee." I followed her into the kitchen. The place was spotless, despite the emotional wreckage from the night before. She moved mechanically, measuring out coffee grounds and filling the pot. I watched in silence, not wanting to overwhelm her with questions. When the coffee was ready, we sat at the small kitchen table. The awkward silence was broken only by the sound of the clock ticking and the soft hum of the refrigerator. "I can't believe you stayed," she finally said, cupping her mug in both hands. "I couldn't leave you like that," I replied. "You shouldn't have been alone." She stared down into her coffee. "Darren would have left. Hell, he did leave. Every time things got hard, he walked away." I leaned back in my chair, unsure what to say. "You deserve someone who doesn't run at the first sign of trouble." She sighed deeply, shaking her head. "I don't even know what I deserve anymore. I thought I had it all figured out, the house, the marriage, the plans. Now it all feels like rubble." I nodded slowly. "Sometimes the plans fall apart so better ones can take their place." Her lips curled into a small, bittersweet smile. "You sound like my therapist." I chuckled softly. "I've had my share of disappointments too." That surprised her. You seem so put together." I shrugged. "I've been engaged once. She left 6 months before the wedding. Said she wasn't ready. I thought I'd never get past it, but life moves forward even if it drags you kicking and screaming." We sat in quiet understanding. There was something oddly comforting in comparing battle scars. After finishing her coffee, she asked if I wanted to join her for a walk. "I just need to get out of this house," she explained. The late morning air was crisp but pleasant. We strolled through the quiet neighborhood streets, passing familiar houses and manicured lawns. For once, no one waved. It felt like the world respected her need for privacy. "I forgot what fresh air felt like," Celeste said as we walked side by side. "I've been trapped in my head for so long." I glanced at her and noticed a calmness in her posture that wasn't there the night before. "You're stronger than you think," I told her. She smiled weakly. "That's nice of you to say." As we walked, our conversation shifted to lighter things, favorite movies, bad takeout experiences, old vacation stories. Slowly, her laughter returned. It was quiet at first, almost hesitant, but soon it became freer, more natural. I couldn't help but smile. "It's good to hear you laugh again." "I didn't realize how much I missed it," she admitted. By the time we looped back toward her house, she looked visibly lighter. Still tired, still healing, but no longer crushed under the weight of despair. As we reached her front steps, she turned to me. "Would you follow me?" "Thank you, Logan. I don't think I've ever had someone show up like you did." "You don't have to thank me," I replied sincerely. "I'm just glad I could help." "I mean it. I've been surrounded by people for years and never felt this safe." Her voice trembled slightly, but her eyes held steady on mine. I didn't know what to say to that. The connection between us was unspoken, but growing stronger. I offered a small nod and a soft, "Anytime, Celeste." I started to turn and head back to my place when she reached out and gently grabbed my wrist. I stopped looking back at her. "Would you mind staying for lunch?" she asked almost shyly. "I know it's a lot to ask after last night, but I don't want to be alone right now." Her vulnerability was honest, and it struck something deep inside me. "Of course," I said with a smile. "I'll be happy to." We ended up making sandwiches together, laughing over my terrible attempts at slicing tomatoes. We ate at the table like old friends, talking more freely now. I learned she loved gardening, that she collected vintage postcards, that she hated mushrooms, but loved mushroom soup. As the afternoon sun cast warm light through the windows, I realized something simple, yet profound, I didn't want to leave. She didn't say it, but I saw it in her expression too. It wasn't about romance, at least not yet. It was about comfort, human connection, and a fragile bond being formed out of broken pieces. When I finally stood to go hours later, Celeste walked me to the door. "Thank you again, Logan. You don't know what this has meant to me." "I'll be around," I promised. I walked back to my house feeling strangely content. My life had been simple before, and I had been fine with that. But somehow meeting her in this unexpected way had already started to change me. I glanced back at her house before closing my front door. I knew I'd be back. The next few weeks fell into an unexpected rhythm. I'd check on Celeste after work sometimes, just to say hi, other times to bring her a coffee or a bouquet of fresh flowers from the corner market. I didn't even know why I did it at first. It just felt right. I wasn't trying to win her over. I just wanted her to smile. And slowly she did. The first time I brought flowers, a simple arrangement of daisies and sunflowers, she stared at them like they were the first kind gesture she'd seen in years. "No one's ever brought me flowers just because," she whispered, eyes misting. "Well, now someone has," I said with a small grin. We spent our afternoons talking on her porch, watching the neighborhood go by. Sometimes it was about silly things like movies we loved or the worst fast food meals we'd ever had. Other times, our conversations drifted into more serious territory, life regrets, betrayal, and the pain of trusting the wrong person. Celeste never hid how torn she was. I could see it every time she smiled, but her eyes stayed cautious. One evening, as the late spring breeze drifted through the trees, she stared at her wedding ring, still on her finger. "I keep thinking if I take it off, it makes everything real," she murmured. I gently reached out my fingers, brushing hers. "You don't have to rush anything. There's no timeline on healing." She gave me a soft, grateful look. "You're good at that." "At what?" I asked, making me feel like I'm allowed to breathe again. Hearing her say that hit me harder than I expected. I never intended for anything to happen between us. Yet every day I felt myself falling a little more. It was never about the way she looked, though I'd be lying if I said she wasn't beautiful. It was her strength, her vulnerability, the way she could be sarcastic and soft, all in the same breath. But I also knew I had to tread carefully. One night after a long walk along the park trail near the lake, we stood at her front door under the porch light. There was a pause, the kind that lingered too long to be casual. "Do you want to come in?" she asked softly. I hesitated. My heart raced. I could see her struggling too, wrestling between comfort and fear. "Not tonight," I said gently. "I don't want you to think I'm expecting anything. I'm here because I care, not because I want something from you." The relief on her face was instant, though tinged with something deeper. "You really are different," she whispered. "That's what scares me." I smiled. "And we'll go at your pace." Over the next few days, I started noticing small changes. She took the ring off one night and placed it in a drawer. She smiled more. Her laughter came easier. She even teased me when I messed up a batch of homemade pancakes. One Saturday afternoon, she invited me to help her plant flowers in the small backyard garden. I knelt in the dirt next to her, laughing as we tried to keep the dog from digging up the fresh soil. Her golden retriever, Marley, had become my shadow whenever I was around. "I think Marley likes you more than me now," she joked, brushing dirt off her jeans. I leaned back, grinning. "I'm not surprised. I do bring treats." We sat side by side on the grass afterward, drinking lemonade and admiring our messy handiwork. "Thank you, Logan," she said quietly. "For what?" "For making me feel human again." I reached over my hands for her, barely brushing hers. "You've always been human, Celeste. You've just been through hell." Our eyes locked for a beat longer than they should have. I could see the warmth, the hesitation, the wall still halfway up. I pulled my hand back, not wanting to push her into anything she wasn't ready for. Later that week, I came home from work to find a small box sitting on my doorstep. Inside was a coffee mug with the words, "Best Neighbor Ever," in bold letters and a handwritten note. "You've done more for me in these past few weeks than I can explain. Thank you for reminding me that good people exist," it read. I stood there holding the note, feeling something settle deep in my chest. This wasn't just friendship anymore. I couldn't deny it. I cared for her in a way I hadn't let myself care for anyone since my own heartbreak years ago. And yet I knew Celeste wasn't ready to open that door fully. Not yet. The next evening we sat together on our couch watching old reruns of Seinfeld. Marley was curled up between us. Celeste yawned and rested her head lightly on my shoulder. "Is this okay?" she asked softly. "Of course," I replied without hesitation. "Whatever feels right to you." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I don't know where this is going, Logan, but I don't want you to go." I placed my arm gently around her, more protective than possessive. "I'm not going anywhere." In that quiet moment, something shifted between us. We weren't just two lonely people filling empty spaces anymore. We were becoming something neither of us had planned, for something fragile and real. I stayed a little longer that night, just holding her while we watched TV and talked about nothing important. When I finally left, she stood in the doorway watching me go, her expression soft but conflicted. I knew I couldn't fix all the pain she'd been through. I also knew I wasn't going to give up on showing her what real care and love looked like. As I walked across the street under the starlit sky, I smiled to myself. For the first time in a long while, I felt like maybe, just maybe, something beautiful was starting. I pulled up in front of her house on a breezy Friday afternoon with 2 plane tickets in hand. I had spent the last week debating if it was too soon, too forward, too bold. But in the end, I trusted my gut. Celeste needed something different, something new, a break from the heaviness of her everyday life. When she opened the door, her tired but welcoming smile immediately eased my nerves. "Hey," she greeted. "What's with the mysterious look?" I held up the envelope. "I know this is crazy, but I got us tickets to Palm Springs just for a week. I figured you deserve a reset, some sun, some peace, no expectations." Celeste stared at me, stunned. "You're serious?" I nodded. 100%. I know you're still healing, but sometimes a change of scenery helps." Her lips parted like she was about to say no, but then she stopped. A slow smile crept onto her face. "You're impossible, Logan." "I'll take that as a yes," I teased. She laughed genuinely and freely. "Yes, I'd love that." The flight the next morning was quiet. We barely spoke, but the silence wasn't awkward. We just soaked in the surreal feeling of leaving our small-town bubble behind. When we landed and stepped into the warmth of the California sun, Celeste took a deep breath. "This feels good," she said. We checked into a quiet boutique hotel on the edge of town with mountain views and palm trees swaying gently in the breeze. Our first full day was spent exploring the streets, popping into small vintage shops and sipping iced lattes at an outdoor cafe. I caught myself watching her when she wasn't looking, the way she smiled at silly postcards, the way her eyes lit up at the sight of vibrant desert flowers. That night we had dinner at a cozy bistro. The string lights above us cast a soft glow across her face. I barely touched my meal, too busy watching her relax in a way I hadn't seen back home. As we walked back to the hotel under the stars, she suddenly stopped and looked at me. "Thank you," she said softly. "You were right. I needed this." "You deserve this," I replied. The week unfolded like a dream. Mornings began with long walks along quiet desert trails. Afternoons were spent lounging by the pool, reading or talking for hours under the shade of palm trees. One afternoon, I noticed her gazing out over the landscape with a calm, almost serene expression. "I never thought I'd feel peaceful again," she admitted. "You've done that for me, Logan." I smiled and reached for her hand. This time she didn't pull away. Each night we found a new restaurant or grabbed takeout and ate on our balcony, watching the sun dip behind the mountains. The air between us shifted. What started as friendship had evolved into something deeper, something unspoken, but undeniably present. On the sixth day, we rented bikes and rode through the winding paths of a botanical garden. At one point, she stopped and stared at a field of bright yellow wildflowers. "My mom loved these," she said quietly. "She used to tell me to find beauty even in hard places." I gently touched her shoulder. "She'd be proud of you." Celeste smiled through misty eyes. "I think she would." I finally found someone who sees me, Logan, all of me, not just the perfect housewife or the woman who holds it all together. Her words struck me straight in the heart. I wanted to tell her I loved her right there, but I held back. It wasn't the right moment. She was still finding herself again, and I didn't want to rush her. Our last night arrived too quickly. We decided to take a long walk along the edge of the resort where the desert met the mountains. The fading orange sky reflected off the distant peaks as we walked in silence. Celeste suddenly stopped and turned toward me. "I've dreaded going back," she confessed. "But now, for the first time in years, I feel like I can, because of you." I took her hands in mine. "You did this. I just got lucky enough to be by your side while you remembered who you are." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I'm still scared. I'm scared to open up again, scared to believe someone could really stay." I brushed my thumb gently across the back of her hand. "I'm not going anywhere." For the first time since we met, she leaned forward and kissed me softly. It wasn't rushed or urgent. It was careful, sincere, and full of quiet relief. When we pulled apart, neither of us said a word. We didn't need to. We stood under the stars for a long while, hand in hand, both knowing this trip had changed everything. The next morning, we packed our bags in silence, but it wasn't the heavy silence of before. It was peaceful, hopeful. At the airport, she rested her head on my shoulder as we waited to board. "Logan," she whispered. "Yeah, thank you for giving me back a piece of myself." I kissed the top of her head. "It's just the beginning." As the plane lifted into the sky, I stared out the window and smiled to myself. I knew what was coming next. I was ready. We both were. The plane touched down, and as we walked through the small-town airport, something had shifted between us. The weight Celeste once carried was noticeably lighter. Her steps weren't rushed nor hesitant. There was calmness. The drive back was quiet but comfortable. Marley greeted us at the door with a full sprint and his usual sloppy enthusiasm. Celeste laughed and dropped to her knees to hug him tightly. It was the first time I realized just how beautiful her laugh was when it wasn't held back by pain. Over the following weeks, life fell back into a peaceful rhythm. We still walked together in the evenings, shared bad takeout, and spent quiet nights watching reruns or sitting on her porch under the stars. But everything was different. There was ease, closeness, the unspoken understanding that neither of us wanted to lose what had slowly, carefully grown between us. One evening, as we strolled along our familiar trail by the lake, I noticed she had slipped her hand into mine without hesitation. It was the smallest gesture, but to me, it meant everything. We stopped at the bench overlooking the water. The sky was painted in warm pinks and oranges. The breeze was gentle. Celeste sighed deeply, the kind of exhale that lets you know someone's finally breathing freely again. "I never thought I'd feel this whole again," she said softly. "You were never broken," I replied. "You were just hurt." She squeezed my hand. "You don't know what you've done for me, Logan. I don't even know how to say thank you for everything." "You don't have to." I had known for weeks what I wanted to do. I'd replayed the moment 1,000 times in my head, imagined every word. I stood turning toward her. She looked up at me curiously. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the small velvet box I had been carrying since the day we got back from Palm Springs. Her eyes widened instantly. "Celeste," I began, my voice steady, my heart racing. "I know we didn't expect this. I know neither of us was looking for this, but what we found is real. You've made me believe in love again. You've shown me what it means to care without conditions, to stand by someone even when it's messy and hard. I don't want to imagine my life without you." I opened the box to reveal a simple, elegant diamond ring. "Will you marry me?" Celeste stared at the ring, then at me. Her hands trembled as she covered her mouth, tears instantly welling in her eyes. I, I don't even know what to say," she whispered. "Say what you feel," I replied softly. She shook her head, laughing through her tears. "You caught me completely off guard." I smiled. "That's what I do best." Celeste stood, wiping her cheeks. 15 years, Logan. 15 years I stayed in something where I felt invisible. I gave everything to someone who didn't value me. I thought I'd never be enough for anyone again. And then you walked across the street and gave me back my life. She took my face in her hands. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, Logan, I will marry you." I slipped the ring on her finger as her tears fell freely, her smile radiant, real. We hugged tightly. I held her as though I never wanted to let go. She rested her head on my chest, and for the first time in so long, she felt safe, certain. We married 6 months later in a small, intimate ceremony by that same lake. The bench where I proposed became a quiet symbol of our new chapter. Marley trotted proudly down the aisle as our ring bearer and our closest friends and family watched as Celeste and I said our vows. I promise to love you when things are easy and when they're not, I told her. I promise to be patient when you're still healing, and I promise to keep showing up no matter what. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she smiled at me. I promise to let myself be loved, she said. I promise to trust that this is real and to never forget that you saved me when I couldn't save myself. When the officiant announced us husband and wife, I kissed her under the wide Carolina sky, surrounded by the people who mattered most. Our life together wasn't perfect. There were hard days, moments when old fears crept in, but we faced them together hand in hand. We traveled, adopted another rescue dog, and turned her house, now our house, into a home filled with laughter, warmth, and second chances. We often sat on the porch in the evenings, Marley at our feet, sipping tea as the sun set over the lake. She would lean her head against my shoulder and whisper, I never thought I'd get this. And I'd answer the same every time, you deserve every second of it. Our love wasn't born from perfection. It was born from patience, kindness, trust, and two people who found each other when they least expected it. That was our story, and it was exactly how it was meant to be. The story of Logan and Celeste delivers a profound life lesson about the healing power of compassion and presence in the face of heartbreak. It teaches us that sometimes the simplest acts, listening without judgment, staying when someone is at their lowest, or offering a moment of genuine care can spark transformative change. Logan's choice to stay with Celeste during her darkest moment wasn't driven by grand intentions, but by a quiet, instinctive kindness that grew into a deep, authentic love. Their journey reminds us that love and connection often bloom in unexpected places, born not from perfection, but from patience, trust, and shared vulnerability. It's a call to show up for others, to recognize that everyone carries unseen burdens, and to offer support without expecting anything in return. Celeste's transformation from despair to hope underscores the resilience of the human spirit and the courage it takes to rebuild after betrayal. Life's greatest gifts often come when we least expect them, through small, selfless moments that ripple into something beautiful. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever experienced or offered a moment of kindness that changed someone's life? Your stories inspire and connect us all. If this story moved you, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell to join our community of heartfelt storytelling. Let's keep exploring the lessons that make life meaningful together.